And those were all on my deal breaker list. Okay. So whenever I initially had my like future husband list, I had these things that I was looking for, and then I had the deal breakers. But though a lot of these, and just like mine, were more extreme. I think it was Dan who said something about the waiters. That is a perfect example of something that I would want you to think about when it comes to the don't settle strategy. Because whenever there's something that is more blatant, like drugs or abuse or something like that, that's more extreme, of course that's going to be a deal breaker. Of course. But what happens and gets to these unhealthy places is we settle for those little things along the way, like not treating their family with respect, or not treating you with respect, or not treating waiters with respect, or not being diligent in their quiet time or their faith or their spiritual disciplines, not being able to regulate their emotions. All of those things are the things that sometimes we can settle for or overlook. And then it turns into these things that spiral into bigger things. And whenever that happens, that's whenever we tend to overlook some things. So that's really what I want to help us prevent long term, you know? So there's 7 parts, 7 questions that I want you to ask yourself when it comes to the don't settle strategy. So the first question, and these are things that I really want you to write down. Like this is stuff that I had written down. Not only do I want you to write it down, but I want you to share it with a friend, because I think that it's so important to have someone to hold you accountable to these things. So what my friends and I, we shared our don't settle strategies with one another, so that whenever we were talking to each other about our relationships, we could be like, hey, let's go through the don't settle strategy, and let's make sure that you are being treated properly and being treated how you deserve to be treated. So it's, how do you want them to treat you? Now, I want you to think about this very specifically, because and I'm going to use my husband as an example for my don't settle strategy, because he really checked off all the boxes, and I really believe that he is God's best for me. And so I want you to write them down, like pen and paper, or, you know, if you're more digital, do what you got to do. How do you want them to treat you? I want to be honored in a specific way that speaks to my heart. But the thing with that is I have to share my heart. So one of the things that my husband and I do to make sure that we are both treating each other with grace and honoring each other is we say what percentage we're at for that day. So um, okay, so what we do is like we're doing each of our percentages up to 50%, because together that makes like 100%, right? Meaning our energy levels, our stability, our emotional state, and that kind of tells the other person how to treat one another. So let's say that I'm having a really tough day. I'm tired. I may be hormonal. I have just done a lot that day. I've gone through a lot of meetings. My husband comes home and I'm like, hey, I am at a 25%. Okay, that is only half of my function. That's only half of my best. So what that communicates to my husband is, I need you to treat me with some grace. I need a lot of grace right now, because I'm just really struggling with the day. Now, then he says, okay, I honestly had a really good day. I'm probably at 50, if not more. I'm like, oh, okay, good. So if he can handle it, he takes over that extra 25, right? And so we're still reaching that 100 of, I'm at 25 and now he's at 75. And that's how we treat our home. And that's how we keep our home in a high communication. This is how I need to be treated today kind of thing. And this goes both ways. You know, if my husband, for example, had a really big meeting yesterday. He needed a lot of mental space. He needed a lot of I guess, peace and quiet from the chaos that is having a toddler. So I was like, okay, knowing that, I was able to really do what I needed to do to take care of myself so I could take over whatever he was lacking. So that's kind of how we communicate. This is how I need to be treated. Um, and that is something that I think has really been helpful for us. Okay, how do you want them to make you feel? Now, that is the second point. And I also want to say that feelings aren't fact. So this is not like an always constant, you need to always make me feel perfect and wonderful and beautiful. I want you to go deeper than that because it's one of those things like for me, I just want to feel wanted. And if you can make me feel wanted, then I will be able to show up in this relationship so much more and so secure. Meaning, and I guess like from that point, you communicate. Okay, these are ways that I feel that way. I feel wanted whenever you encourage me to take care of myself, or whenever you bring flowers, or if you give me some words of affirmation. Consider love languages for how the feeling kind of part goes as well. It's just up to you to communicate these things, right? It's such a crucial part of the healthy relationship of communication. What ideals do you want to have in common? Okay, that one, like, blow the faith stuff out of the water. That is 100% whenever I'm like, okay, the number one thing is faith. Like, absolutely, if you are not bearing fruit or if I'm not bearing fruit, like, we need to work individually before we come together. What ideals do you want to have in common? So, one of those things for us, and one of the things that is really important for us, is a healthy marriage, meaning divorce is not an option. And we say that because we both come from divorced parents. So, divorce is something that's in our families. And that is honestly something that you really need to talk about because it could be an option for some people. And for us, and for me specifically on my don't settle strategy, I said that needs to be one of the ideals. The importance of marriage and the value of marriage has to be important to them too. And then what are your deal breakers? If you talk down to me or disrespect me, that's a deal breaker because I know that that doesn't get better with time. Typically, it gets worse with time. And I say that because that's how it ended up happening with my abusive relationship. It didn't start out straight up, abusive or whatever. It just started these little disrespectful comments here and there. And then they just got bigger and bigger and bigger. But I also want to talk about green flags because I think that somebody said earlier, sometimes we're too intense with our red flags or we like cut it off immediately whenever we see the red flags. So that's why I think that green flags are equally as important. We also need to consider the green flags. I'm going to tell you a perfect example of this from my husband and I. When we were dating, somebody came up to me and they were like, Ainsley, you need to be careful. This guy is a player. He is not going to treat you well. Like you need to be careful. And that totally freaked me out because I was just out of an abusive relationship 6 months prior. So I was like, oh no, I'm not going there. I'm not doing this. I'm not having this. So then I go to him and I'm like, hey, this person told me to be careful. What's this about? And I gave him the chance to explain himself. I wasn't going to cut him out without hearing him out. So he was able to kind of explain the situation to which that girl was talking about. And it gave me a lot of insight. And then B, it gave me clarity on, okay, that was just one isolated incident and one girl who was friends with that girl from the isolated incident. And it really had so much less to do with my husband than it had to do with that girl. But that was neither here nor there. Then from that point, after I gathered that information, I kind of tucked it away and I thought, okay, how is he treating me? if this person's telling me to be careful, what are some things that I am noticing about how he is with me that I can kind of anchor my green flag to? And it turned out he was treating me so well. He was so respectful. He was so communicative. He was amazing. And I was like, what that red flag that somebody kind of told me to be careful really was stomped out by that green flag. That green flag really outweighed it. And I mean, we have been together for a decade. So I was able to weigh the red flags with the green flags. Last one, what are the physical boundaries that you want to stick to? Now, I want you to be as detailed as possible when it comes to this one, whenever you're writing it down, because it's so important whenever you get into the heat of the moment, if you will, to remember the physical boundaries that you wanted to stick to. Do you not want to be in the same room alone? Do you not care about that? Do you feel like self control might be difficult? One of the things that could make or break your relationship is the physical part of what boundaries you want to stick to or how you want to communicate um, those with that person. I 100% recommend being super upfront about it, super honest about it, to see if you're on the same page or not, because the last thing that you want to do is be in the moment and have to clarify with each other. And then that is just can be so brutal and can be awkward for sure. Yes. So those are the 7 questions that I love to go through with the don't settle strategy.